Hi there, this is JP Block, and I have a blog for you today, and it is called The Silver Dollar. Um, my mother was a second generation Russian American who took her Russian heritage extremely seriously. However, I was a third generation Russian American who from day one wanted nothing to do with anything Russian. It was the time of the Cold War, and I didn't want kids to think I was a communist, but I also felt alienated from the culture itself. I did not speak the language, I did not like the food or music. In any way, I wanted to be an all American suburban kid, just like the ones on the TV shows. My mother also took manners and etiquette extremely seriously. At times, it seemed like she believed that the people who went to heaven were the ones who had the best manners. Once again, I fell short of her expectations. I was, by nature, a slob who could not or would not abide by her table manner rules. To this day, I feel uncomfortable eating out because I don't like having to remember what to do with this or that knife or fork. The pleasure of having to follow such rules has eluded me for all of my life. Though I do this less often as I've gotten older, I sometimes have found pleasure in doing the wrong thing at the dinner table or wedding or whatever the formal occasion. Mother, never called Mom, also would tell me what I should say when I met whoever it was that supposedly was so important. This included how I should greet the priest of the Eastern Orthodox Church when we moved to a new town when I was starting first grade. He had a Russian-sounding name that was hard to pronounce, and I felt extremely embarrassed having to say, "How do you do, Father so-and-so," because it was something none of the other kids I knew would ever have to say. My mother seemed oblivious to my irritation at having to rehearse this little formal greeting. Looking back, she was the sort of person who thought every little thing made a difference, while I am a person who believes very little makes a difference. Also, there had been a scandal of sorts in the town we used to live in. The priest of that Eastern church got busted for exposing himself. I was not supposed to know anything about this, but I was the youngest in my extended family, and grown-ups did not always pay attention to where I was when they were gossiping. I didn't quite get why what he did was bad, but the incident gave me a sense that being a religious officiate did not automatically mean you were a good person. I have only a dim memory of either of these priests, and I recall them both as kind of creepy. In more recent years, as reports of Catholic priests sexually abusing children have made news, I was not surprised at all. Not that I was ever abused by one, but I have long found priests, ministers, preachers, and rabbis to be shady characters. For that matter, TV's Mr. Rogers always reminded me of a child molester, and I've heard that he was an ordained something. In any event, the time came for my mother, sister, and myself to go to this new church, where I would stand for 1 to 2 hours because there were no pews to sit on in this religion. I would hear recitation and singing in a language I knew nothing about. My childhood exposure to this form of Christianity served as a barrier to finding grace by going to church. It bored me, and like most children, I hated being bored. Still, I found cause to be enthusiastic by the end of the service. The way this particular church handled communion in the collection plate was to have altar boys lined up with bread to take and money to give. But since the bread was for taking, I assumed the money was too. I instantly spotted a big silver dollar and took it. I was proud of myself for thinking so quickly and not settling for a puny-sized nickel or quarter or one of those dull-looking paper dollars. Perhaps for the first time in my 6 short years, I felt like a winner. Maybe it came from having a mother who worked full-time and who so often seemed tired and sad. Or maybe it came from having a father I didn't know and was raised to hate. Or maybe it was something in my DNA. But like many people in my family, I had to fight hard and lose many battles before I truly believed I had a right to be the person I wanted to be. A great big silent and invisible no seemed always to follow me. Yet the silver dollar I technically stole made the no go away for a few minutes. Looking back with irony, stealing from a church collection plate was the first time I felt blessed. Maybe going to church wasn't so bad after all. When the service ended, I excitedly told anyone and everyone, "I got $1. How much did you get?" In fact, when I did indeed meet Father so-and-so, I forgot all about how do you do and instead said to him, "I got $1." He looked confused and my mother scowled for my having blown my big line, but I was too happy to care. As we crossed the street to walk home, my mother realized what I'd done. She took the silver dollar out of my greedy paws and brought it back to the church. When I explained my logic, help yourself to bread, so why not money, she didn't stay mad at me. Before long, she would be confined to her bed with a drawn-out illness that led to her death shortly after my 9th birthday. The story of the silver dollar and other antics I pulled remained untold when I lived with other relatives and then lived on my own while still a minor. Only as an adult did I start to look back on my life as a kind of folklore tale. Privately, though, I never forgot about the silver dollar, and in a nutty sort of way, I still believe it wanted me. When I am feeling low, recalling that feeling of bliss has helped to lift my spirits. I like that kid who thought for one moment that he belonged in the world. If it is true that God works in mysterious ways, I think that the silver dollar was the first moment in which matters of the spirit beckoned to me. My guardian angel winked and had a good laugh. In a sense, that silver dollar was my first communion wafer. The silver dollar told me there was a place for me in this strange realm in which tangibles and intangibles got mixed together. I had a self-will that did not come from anyone else and which could not be taken away from me as long as I was alive, and maybe even beyond that. I could succeed, and if there was really a God, the pathway was no longer blocked by gibberish and hostile formalities. Money of any denomination can, of course, be a nice thing to have in abundance, yet, rich or poor, many people still find something special about a silver dollar. If they happen upon one, it may seem to be a lucky sign, which may be why so many gambling houses still use them. People collect silver dollars and treat them with a respect often reserved for living things. There seems something magical about the silver dollar, which is still used to name thousands of bars and restaurants across the country and Western-themed establishments all around the world. I understand its appeal, some of which defies words. It isn't about money, since after all, $1 gets you only so far. But I suppose I have been looking for silver dollars all my life, and I still think that God wants me to have one. Thank you.